On today's show, the Cavs are going on the road for 5 games. Let's preview that, talk about the Darius Garland-Donovan Mitchell pairing, and more. Thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, and the promo code is Locked On. Locked On, one word, pretty easy.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. I'm Chris Manning. I cover the Cavs and NBA at large for places like Diamond UPROXX and SB Nation for the Sword. That man is Evan Dammarell. He is at Down Euclid as well as Fear the Sword. Okay, segment 1 today, we're going to talk about the Darius Garland-Donovan Mitchell pairing and what it looked like against Boston on Wednesday. Segment 2, we're going to look ahead to Cavs Pistons, which takes place on Friday. And we're going to do a little look ahead as well to what teams in the future maybe we could see being competitors to the Cavs in the East, not just this year, but in the future. In segment 3, we'll look ahead to the road trip as a whole. Cavs are going on the road for 5 games. Detroit, LA twice, Lakers and Clippers on a back-to-back, Sacramento, and San Francisco to play the Golden State Warriors before they play the Minnesota Timberwolves at home next Sunday. But Evan, let's start with Garland and Mitchell. When you watch them play Wednesday night, really the preseason sort of counts, but their first full game together, what stood out to you about their partnership, about how they played together, how they worked off of each other?
You saw a little bit of where it's a work in progress still, where sometimes it's like his turn, my turn, and then there's more times where it didn't look like buddy ball out there, and it more so looked like the Cavs were finding offensive wrinkles to kind of get things going. I think Mitchell kind of making a concerted effort to get Garland going in the first quarter like he did, and just encouraging Darius to shoot it whenever he had the ball, and it was extremely effective. It was the highest scoring quarter of Darius Garland's career up to this point, which is still weird to think about, but Mitchell is doing a good job just kind of letting Garland run the show. Kind of, he's said on multiple occasions now, like, hey, this is Darius's team. He's the lead guard. He's the franchise guard. I'm just here to support him, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But you see a little bit of some of the wrinkles they still need to iron out. But for the most part, it was a really solid performance against a very good Boston team defensively. And I think at least when it came to Garland maybe having not his legs fully underneath him, Mitchell just having such a strong motor and able to kind of just keep bringing it in the fourth quarter and then overtime really counterbalanced it too. And you could also see, like, yeah, this is what the Cavs were hoping for when they traded for him, because you finally have a guy who can relieve a lot of the defensive pressure Darius Garland faces, and then you can watch them just manipulate defenses off of one another or with the ball in their hands too.
I found it interesting at times where, like, you could see, like, Mitchell went out of his way to say post game that he's like, I want you to just go score. I think he said, like, the first 10 points, he's like, I want you to just shoot. I want you to get back into it. You could see them at the end of games, like, kind of deciding, like, at times, like, okay, who's going to lead the set, who's going to do this stuff, and, like, that's just, I would sense that's a familiarity thing, right? Like, that is going to be something that takes time. That is going to take just moments and things to figure out as far as that goes and how that is going to look. That's not going to be an easy thing. But, like, if you just look at how, like, effective it was in that sense, like, I think you come away feeling pretty good about how they complement each other, how they differ. I mean, if there's one thing, Evan, that felt sort of clear to me, it's that Mitchell's going to be the guy who is the scorer of the two. Took 27 shots, 3 of 9 from 3, 11 to 27 from the field. His assists and his need to kind of be that passing finisher was a little lessened, obviously, with no Garland, right? Or with Garland back, excuse me. It was just a little bit different. Garland, on the other hand, is the guy kind of orchestrating things a little bit more, playing sort of the the guy that's going to kind of set everything up. He actually had the higher usage of the two based on his assist and his scoring in that game versus Mitchell. And like those guys, aside from like Kevin Love, who had the high usage on the team in his 50 minutes, but like just because all he does on offense is finish possessions, really, that's like and move the ball. That's kind of all he does. Like those two guys are the horses, and that's very clear. And we'll see how that evolves with Mobley over time. Maybe that looks different on a game where Mobley isn't in foul trouble, or maybe Mobley forces his hand in some ways by what he does, and that opens up some things for him as well, and that changes this. But you can tell that like what we sort of thought, I think, initially, that like they have different skill sets that should fit together well. Like if there was a case study, if this was like a test run of like how this is going to work in a high pressure situation against a good defense, I would feel good about that being your first time through that gauntlet.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that assessment, especially with what you said towards the end. And I think it's not a hot take to say that this is, in fact, not the worst trade in Cavs history. I still think the Ron Harper trade is up there for Cleveland or any of the other moves that had Stepien made regarding draft picks. But regardless, yeah, you see a little bit of it, especially against the Celtics on Wednesday night. And the point you made about Mobley is definitely interesting as well, too, because JB Bickerstaff kind of said post-game, I believe Jason Lloyd was going to ask, like, these guys are going to be your primary offensive engine, like, the ball is going to be going through them a lot on offense, and Bickerstaff kind of pushed back a little bit, saying, like, yeah, we'd like to, play a little bit of basketball socialism. He didn't say it like that, but that's what he's hoping for, where it's not just two guys carrying the offensive load on a night-to-night basis, even though realistically that's probably what it's going to be, but you get more from Evan Mobley, you get more from Jared Allen, you get a little bit of Karis LeVert making more of those catch-and-shoot opportunities. You probably get more bench production than you did against Boston on some nights as well. Like, I think the Cavs are going to have random guys step up because there are going to be nights when Donovan Mitchell maybe doesn't have it, because we've seen him have poor shooting nights so far for Cleveland as well, too. But he counterbalances it with the playmaking and just the constant offensive pressure he puts on opposing defenses. And there's going to be nights Garland doesn't have it either. Like, let us not forget that he was playing amped up in the season opener in Toronto, but didn't look great up to that point either, and I think he settled in definitely against Boston, looked a lot more like his old self. But there's going to be nights one of them doesn't have it, there's going to be nights where neither of them have it. I mean, realistically, when they played the Pistons on Friday night, neither of them could play either, and the Cavs could give them the night off just to give them some load management, also because they tweaked an ankle in Mitchell's case and a knee in Garland's case against Boston on Wednesday night. So I think the Cavs are just going to have to do a little bit of soul searching, find a little bit of things. Like, I think some of the passing and stuff that you see from Mobley and Allen is definitely interesting. I think LeVert kind of being like that third ball handler in the starting lineup and in certain lineups in general, like he's like the secondary creator, like unlocks a lot of things. Like, yeah, there's some more evolutions and steps this Cavs team can take offensively, clearly. But for now, when you look at it, and if you just need like film to chop up, digest, and spit back out and just kind of turn into some of your like what did work for you, like chop up a lot of this tape between Mitchell and Garland on Wednesday night against Boston. It was extremely effective what they were able to do together, and probably if you didn't have both of them out there, Cleveland doesn't win this game in the end.
No, I mean, like it's like you weren't going to get 41 points again from LeVert. I mean, like Mitchell was a little different in this game. And the other thing I would note that I found sort of interesting in looking at it is that Mitchell in all game, he's like getting a decent number of his shots this year, like as assisted shots, which is it's a little less ISO for him. I think that number, I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to just ramp up with Garland there to feed him. I mean, I like the fact that they had that look where they just where Mitchell runs the court and like they get that lob out of it because Mitchell is just like, I'm gonna play wide receiver, I'm gonna run straight down the field and I'm gonna get a dunk. And like Garland is that kind of guy who when he plays with his head up, he's going to find reads in that situation. He can help maximize some of your fast breaks up. Excuse me. I think like there's just little ways like that where you're going to see them create nothing out of something. And these two should just. I think the expectation should be this gets better as it goes, and as they learn each other's tendencies, they get more comfortable. Like, this was obviously a really good start. I think naturally these guys fit together well. I think you should expect some of this in some ways, maybe subtle, maybe it takes time, whatever. I suspect they should get better. But after the break, we're going to come back. We are going to touch on Cavs Pistons. We'll note the fact that they are both questionable. Maybe we'll touch a little bit about if it's worth it for them to play and all of that. But Evan is first going to tell us about our friends at PrizePicks.
Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by PrizePicks. To play, pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go score more or less than the PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people, it's just you versus the projections made available, and PrizePicks offers projections on any sports that you can watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college hoops, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Eurobasket, cricket, and so much more. Thank goodness Chris cut this list short. We'd be here all day. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and they offer safe and fast withdrawals. They currently are operational in over 30 states and Canada as well. So if you're interested, go download the PrizePicks apps or pick prizepicks.com and head there and sign up today to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match for up to $100 with a promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100 back. If you deposit 50 buckaroonies, PrizePicks will give you $50 dues in return. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON to sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Again, that's PrizePicks, and the promo code is LOCKEDON.
Back here on the Locked On Cavs podcast, I'm Chris Manning. That man is Evan Dammarell. So, injury report for Friday in Detroit. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Howell Neto, all of them are questionable. Both Garland is related to a little knock he picked up in the Celtics game. Mitchell, obviously, we saw him twist his ankle in that game. We'll see if they play. Neto twisted his ankle against the Knicks, missed the other night. Dylan Windler, if I had a breaking news like sound I could hit right now, I'd play it in jest, but he is, again, out with an injury. Evan, I look, I don't have like a strong take on like if I feel like those two guys should play or not. Like if they're fine to play, they're going to play, and that's cool. I think you'd rather have them get into a rhythm. If it's at all like troublesome for them, then maybe just sit them into early, whatever. But like you would obviously just like rather have them than not. And if like both of them don't play, like you might just need to like chalk the L on this game. Like you might, because like it's just going to be of not. I don't necessarily know how they're going to function that well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's great. You've won 6 in a row if you're the Cavs. I think it's even better you won 5 of those 6 without Darius Garland on the floor, but your NBA season isn't encapsulated in the first 8 games of the year, and Detroit is a team that plays hard. They beat the Warriors the other night in the Teals. I don't know if they're wearing them Friday night, but if they do, must-see TV for you folks. But at the end of the day, the Cavs don't need to get so lost in the details because, let's be frank, the Pistons aren't going to be a team that the Cavs are fighting with in playoff positioning towards the end of the season. Yeah, this game may have some significance, but in the grand scheme of an 82-game grind, you can afford to rest some of your star players, and I teased about this a little bit, but yeah, load management is a good way to look at it, and they do have realistic reasons to manage the loads of Garland and Mitchell. Garland, people thought he hyperextended his knee based on the Twitter doctor analysis I saw just scrolling through my feed when he dove into towards the stands to try and grab a ball, and he accidentally collided with the cameraman. Looks like he hyperextended his knee. And then Mitchell, as we all know, did twist his ankle and was favoring it a little bit. He was very ginger on that ankle. Post-game, as he wrapped up his presser, I noticed. So we'll see what the availability and the overall thought process is if you're the Cavs. If it were me, I'd probably just rest these guys, maybe take it easy, lean more heavily on Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Probably play Karis LeVert at this point, and then you start Isaac Okoro and Jetty Osman next to them, but you just more so lean on Mobley and Allen against Detroit, and then LeVert's already leading the Cavs in minutes, I believe, at this point in the season, so it'd just be another day in the office for him, and then give Garland Mitchell Friday night off. They have Saturday to rest as they travel, then there's Sunday in Los Angeles, and then Monday in Los Angeles, and that'll be definitely another game worth watching, because one, does JB rest one of them on a back-to-back? Does he stagger the two of them, or does he just not play either of them in the first game and then maybe try them again in the second game? I don't know. It's interesting stuff, but yeah, again, these games have meaning, but I'd rest them if it were me, just because you would rather have these guys be 100% right and not risk anything more serious by playing game 8 of an 82-game season.
Yeah, Mitchell is playing so far this season. He's played 270 minutes. That's the highest the team. He's playing almost 40 minutes a night to start the year. LeVert is playing 36.6 and has played 256 minutes. Mobley's third at 240. Allen is fourth at 231. We'll see. I think that I would the back-to-back isn't. We'll get to this in segment 3. That back-to-back is like less of a bad back-to-back than you would think, just because it's A in LA and B. The Clippers are also going to be in a back-to-back on Monday, and even though it's in LA and in their home base, they play later in the day on Sunday than the Cavs do. So that's like a little weird quirk of the schedule that gives them advantage. We'll come back to that again in segment 3. But Evan, let's take this time just to like look in the future a little bit. I want to just have just a little look out into the distance. If you're looking at like 2 years from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. Are the Pistons a team that you're thinking about as a potential like one of the other potential teams to watch in the East? Are they a potential like rival as you kind of look forward? Like who are the teams that you were kind of along with the Cavs? I think because I think we both would say we're pretty high on what this team could be the next couple of years. Who are the other teams you kind of are looking at and saying, okay, I think this is one of the teams that could be ultimately very competitive in the East in the next couple of years?
Well, I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take, of course, but Boston is obviously going to be up there just because that's a very young team that is only just going to get better with time and experience. I think the Pistons have the potential. I mean, well, Atlanta as well, just because they're just interesting. Like they're an interesting mix of veterans and young players too. In terms of just like aging rosters out, like the Bucks still have Giannis, they still have Chris, they still have Drew, but like eventually those guys maybe get aged out a little bit. We'll see. The Heat are obviously out. I think it's Cleveland, Toronto, Boston. Probably those 3 are going to be like leading the charge in terms of just quote unquote like youth movements that are ready to take the next step. And Detroit, it's just hard because the Pistons, I believe, have a very fun and young, interesting cast, but they're 2-7 on the season heading into this game against Cleveland. I think they're going to be competitive in a lot of these games. Like they barely lost to the Bucks 2 games ago, and then they get blown out the following night against Milwaukee. Like I said, they beat the Warriors. Then like they have an interesting, just like in terms of just looking at the record and how the games have gone. Like they've been somewhat competitive in some games, somewhat competitive in not some games. So like projecting down the line and towards the future for Detroit, I can't really say for certain. Like I think they'll be in the conversation, sure, but they have Cade, they have Jaden Ivey, they have Jalen Duren, they have Sadiq Bey, they have, I mean, Marvin Bagley is there too, and he's kind of an interesting player, even though he's not great, but he's under contract with them for at least the next few years. Bogdanovich is on contract with them. They have Hamidou Diallo, they have, like, Killian Hayes isn't great, but, like, he was once a player too. Like, they have a lot of interesting young pieces on their roster. It's just, and there's Isaiah Stewart as well. It's just, can they take the next steps? Can they learn how to win? And I think that's the hardest part is like, this is such a young and inexperienced team. Sure, you have veterans like right now and Alec Burks. You have Nerlens Noel on this roster. You have pretty much, I mean, Bogdanovich as well. Like, those are like your kind of your key veterans.
Well, he's on
at this point.
He, I believe, is on an expiring, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to check on that.
Bogdanovich signed an extension with
the that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And then I guess Corey Joseph technically too is a pseudo veteran for this Pistons team, but like the Pistons still have a few more steps to go. So maybe in the next 2 years, I wouldn't like, sure, maybe they are knocking on the door, maybe they're a playoff team, but I still think they have like another step or two to get there. And who knows, maybe Dwayne Casey isn't the guy that sees them through to it. Maybe he's just going to act as kind of the guy who develops this talent, and then the Pistons do something similar to what happened to Dwayne Casey towards the end in Toronto, where they realize Dwayne Casey just isn't the guy who's going to take them there. They let him go and they bring in somebody else, like what the Raptors did with Nick Nurse. So we'll see what happens, of course. I obviously can't predict in the future. I like what the Pistons have assembled. I think they're going to get another top pick in this upcoming draft and add a really nice player to this rotation and just really kind of put them in a different stratosphere. But they need to crawl before they ball. And I just don't think I could lump them together with like the teams like Cleveland, Boston, Toronto, and then you have like some teams that are still going to be like Milwaukee's still going to be around. Brooklyn, God knows what's going to happen, but if they still have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, like they're still going to be present as well too. Philadelphia is going to be very good for a while too. Like there's other teams that are still kind of in the mix and that are a couple shades ahead of where the Pistons are at right now.
I think 2 years from now is just like a year from now. It's like I could see Philly still being good, but like Lord knows, I mean, Harden's hurt now. Like, is Embiid sneakily like the star that asks out? Like that's their like Jaylen Brown has a contract situation coming up. What happens there? All of these teams, interestingly, like the Pistons in their case, like have like Cade has to take another step. Like Ivy has to prove that like the buzz and the excitement around what he could provide ends up being worth it. Right? Like these are all things you have to prove it and work. So about like I think like if you're looking at teams you'd feel like the most rock solid about, it's like Cleveland, Boston, and Toronto. The Bucks obviously just because as long as Giannis is like near or at the peak of his powers, like that team is gonna destroy people. Like they're 7-0 right now. The Cavs play them twice this month, by the way, and I cannot wait for those games. Those are going to be a ton of fun and interesting, even with no Chris Middleton for those games for the Bucks. But
and like also let's throw Charlotte into the mix too. Like Charlotte could do something if they like kind of figure out a lot of stuff, but like LaMelo is a really good building point.
I'm not really sure Charlotte is like and like that's like if you're saying like
LaMelo, PJ Washington, Nick Richards, Jalen McDaniels, Mark Williams.
When Nick Richards is the third name you're naming on a team in terms of them ascending into your
chart right now. That's why I just said that. Like James Bouknight could be something. I don't know. Like
I
think the Hornets and the Pistons are on the same playing field right now.
The Pistons are more intriguing because
they have that pieces, but I'm also very high on LaMelo too, so I think like that's where you could like make an argument at least. And if the Hornets like shift a lot of things and kind of move a lot of these just crappy contracts they have and just mediocre-ish players on the ends of their rotation, like they could maybe do some stuff with it. Like let's say they flip Terry Rozier for Russell Westbrook and they get a first or future first out of the Lakers for it. Like that could be a juicy asset for them to maybe go make a move if they want to cobble that with Gordon Hayward's contract or something.
Orlando's more like Orlando is more like Detroit to me than Hornets were. Okay. East is going to be fun. That's the point of this. Cavs, Pistons, like, look, just with the Mobley Cade stuff, that in itself can just be like a fun little tete-a-tete as we go forward. But after the break, we're going to dive into the road trip as a whole. Again, 5-game road trip. The Cavs will see LeBron James and the Lakers on Sunday, the Clippers Monday, the Kings next Wednesday, I believe the Warriors on Friday, and then they play they'll return home against the Wolves a week from Sunday. But I want to remind you to check out Locked On Sports today. Make it your second listen today. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available in the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. We'll be right back. All right, back here on the Locked On Cavs podcast, Chris Manning, Evan Dammarell. Okay, Evan, let's run through this road trip. We'll start with the back-to-back on Sunday. Obviously, the LeBron stuff will be a thing. But I said this in segment 2. That back-to-back, as far as back-to-backs go, is manageable. The Clippers, again, were also playing on Sunday. They tip off at 10 Eastern time. The Cavs are playing at 3:30 Eastern time. The Cavs will have more time after their game to recover and get ready for the next day. That's an advantage for the Cavaliers even on the road. So like that's a winnable back-to-back. The Lakers, like I know they've won 2 in a row and stuff. That's a winnable game. The Clippers have Kawhi out right now, so like that's. But it's tied. They'll play hard and stuff. But like that's also a winnable game. Go to the Kings game. Scrappy under Mike Brown, but like not particularly good yet. 23rd in net rating. They're 24th in defense. Okay, and then the Warriors are not at full strength either. But it's the Warriors, so I would just like assume that's going to be a tough game. And I'm curious to see how Cleveland looks defensively and how like someone like LeVert and how Mitchell, how those two guys do against that style. But Evan, I think like as far as like West Coast road trips goes, again, like you maybe aren't going to go 5-0 here and get to 11-1. Like maybe like you lose the Pistons game if those guys sit out in particular and whatnot. And there's not like a line out in that game yet from our friends at BetOnline. But like this is a pretty manageable road trip for a Cavs team that absolutely is playing really well and is still in a good spot to just stack some wins. Like yes, maybe are they going to drop one of these games here or there? Yeah, sure. But this is like a pretty manageable West Coast road trip in my mind.
Yeah, it's a mini slice of a tougher road trip towards the beginning of January, where they are in Denver Friday night. They are then in Phoenix 2 nights after that. Then they're in Utah 2 nights after that. Then they're in Portland 2 nights after that. Then they're in Minnesota 2 nights after that. And they stop at home on Monday to play New Orleans. And they're back on the road again in Memphis. Then that's just in the beginning stretch of January. So it's a good primer, a good test, I would say. You're getting all the true West Coast games out of the way. Like you said, the Pistons game, even without Garland and Mitchell, I think that's winnable, but it'll definitely be tougher without those two because they are such core pieces of the offensive engine for Cleveland. The Lakers, that is an interesting game, and I didn't realize it was 3:30. I just assumed it was a 10 o'clock game, and I was ready just to cuddle up with a cup of coffee and watch that game. But that's more manageable for Cleveland, so it's technically 12:30 p.m. Los Angeles time. So like you said, more rest time, and the Clippers are in.
Or if they get some LA flu, then maybe it's less.
That's true, but to your point, the Clippers are playing in Salt Lake City, they're home in Salt Lake City.
That's what I said.
That night. So sorry,
that's what I
misunderstood. I just misunderstood. But either way, they had to play the Jazz, and the Jazz are playing really well to start the season. To their credit, the Jazz are a fun, young, scrappy team. Shouts to Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen for doing well over there. Former Cavs greats, just so people don't shoot me for saying that, mentioning them. But yeah, this road trip will be definitely interesting. I think the Lakers game will probably be the tone setter this back-to-back, because yes, the Lakers have virtually no depth whatsoever. They have LeBron James and Anthony Davis just running the show, and then they have supporting pieces like Lonnie Walker, and Patrick Beverley happens to be there. And we joked about it in jest a little bit on Thursday's show that Cavs Summer League legend Matt Ryan was a key player for the Lakers, and
he had a game-tying 3 and became a meme.
Yeah, well, he kind of always was, but just for perspective, they're playing Troy Brown, who's a good player. They have Juan Toscano Anderson, who's a good player. The Lakers have some interesting enough pieces. I just don't think they have the depth that can really kind of go toe-to-toe with Cleveland. And I think the Cavs can pressure the Lakers in a lot of interesting ways. But I think Sunday's game will be a tone setter for this road trip, truly, where if you beat the Lakers and you can beat them pretty easily and just keep them arm's length away the entire time, and then you can just kind of gear up for the Clippers, who, there's no Kawhi, but still Paul George is playing out of his gourd. Ty Lue is just a very, very good coach who can maximize his roster even when he's lacking his stars. And Ty is probably going to tactically prepare for the Cavs because he does have some familiarity with some of the dudes on this roster, even though there's not many of them left at this point. But it's going to be an interesting road trip. I don't think the Cavs are obviously going to go undefeated. I could see them dropping a game, with the one being most likely is probably Golden State, just because, like you said, they are a little showing their age a little bit, but they still have Andrew Wiggins, they have Steph Curry, they have Klay Thompson. Draymond Green obviously just isn't the same player he was several years ago or even last year, but is still incredible defensively. I think the Warriors are 3-5 on the season and 0-4 on the road, which I didn't know that, and they are beating the Magic by 5 right now as we're recording this, so we'll see how it goes. But the Warriors are a good home team, of course, and we'll also just take a gander at this. Could be one of those put up or shut up kind of games. The Cavs really showed that they can hang with the Eastern Conference champs. All right, how they look against the defending NBA champs, because they have a lot of young depth on their bench as well. They have Moses Moody, who hasn't been playing great, but he's still fun and interesting. James Wiseman is going to give you some interesting just circumstances. JaMychal Green isn't a bad player either. Ty Jerome's good. Jordan Poole is freaking out of his gourd still. So the Warriors are probably the biggest test. I think the Kings are up there as well, just because maybe Mike Brown will do a better job coaching them, but the Kings are just fun and interesting too. So again, this Lakers game is going to be the tone setter, I'd say. And then if you handle the Clippers, handle a back-to-back, which is your first quasi-test if you're on the road for the Cavs, because that's the other part, is they're all these games are on the road, and that's a different beast in itself too. But we'll see how it goes. It's a good warm-up to a longer stretch in early January when the calendar flips over.
Yeah, in terms of, again, just where these teams that they're playing are at, in terms of adjusted, look at the adjusted net rating from Basketball Reference. The Cavs are first in that stat right now, which is just to the competition level. The Warriors are 27th, the Clippers are 28th, the Kings are 24th, and the Lakers are 26th. So like these are like teams that have not been playing well to start the year. You should, I think, again, like you're expecting, particularly from I think from Golden State, you're expecting some bounce back. I'm also just, honestly, if I don't gamble, I kind of would expect a wild LeBron game on Sunday.
Oh yeah, it's
that feels like a lock. That just feels like LeBron's going to do some LeBron stuff.
Oh yeah, the Lakers were bad last year, and then we watched LeBron just eviscerate the Cavs at home. So
would not surprise me if he drops like 40.
I mean, like making the sign across for Karis LeVert for audio listeners because he did a good job in defending Jason Tatum at times, and JB Bickerstaff made a point to like stick LeVert on Tatum. I am very intrigued to see how the Cavs defend LeBron on Sunday because maybe it's Mobley, maybe it's LeVert, maybe it's a mix of the two. Who knows?
I think a lot of big switching onto LeBron James if they run pick and roll with him would be my guess.
We'll see. Like, yeah, he's a step slower. He's showing a little bit of his age, but the mind and body are still equal enough that he can do quite a bit of damage. And LeBron is the type of dude who would definitely like to stick it to his old team just because, even if there's no bad blood between the two.
Also, just want to know what he's going to say is the other thing. I just kind of curious to see like what he says about, because he's going to get asked about what he thinks of the...
He's going to be at a loss for words and then say a small book. And there's no speculation on him coming back to Cleveland. He signed that extension. That would have been the more interesting narrative. If LeBron didn't sign the extension to the Lakers this summer, this game would have some outside implications with a lot of people doing the side-eye emojis during it.
Oh, that, yeah, I'm kind of glad. I hate that stuff. That's not.
I know you do.
I'm not built for those.
I know you're not, but folks,
he's gonna send a message though. Is the thing. I'm sure he's gonna be like,
he's gonna do the thing where he like the Lakers be wearing white, but the purple's fitting, so. So, like, doing this, like, talking to Darius or Donovan or Kevin Love after the game, and then, like, hugging up everybody on the Cavs bench and roster and coaching staff, and then he'll effuse a bunch of praise on Darius because they have the same agent.
Also, him and Mitchell worked out together this summer at the trainer in New York, so... And we'll get some good Kevin Love LeBron moments as well, I'm sure. But, all right, that is going to wrap it up for today. Thanks so much for making
We'll talk about those games on Monday.
Yes, but thanks to
the Lakers quite a bit. So.
Yeah, thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens. I think just depending on what happens Friday, Evan, I believe, will be covering the Charge season opener, but I may just do like a 10-minute YouTube-only recap of Cavs Pistons, if that's of interest, and then maybe that'll rerun on Monday as well, but be on the lookout for that. There will be something on Cavs Pistons in your feed like late Friday night, early Saturday morning, because we got a lot of comments last week about wanting Cavs Celtics stuff, and look, we go Monday through Friday. We're not going to do full episodes on the weekend, but maybe we'll throw something up. I'll throw something up after that game at the very least, and we'll try to do that for some of these weekend games as we have time and availability. But for your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Everyone have a good weekend. I will talk to you tomorrow after Cavs Pistons. Evan will be back on Monday. We'll recap the whole weekend and talk a lot about that Lakers game. Until then, be well.